that while
Right.
filming here.
Right.
You know, I'll get a whole lot of trouble. All right, John?
Yeah, a whole lot of trouble going on. Isn't that an Elvis song?
Jerry Lee Lewis. Whole lot of
See,
shaking.
I know,
Whole lot of
yeah, I
shaking.
know.
That guy was a madman, right?
Yeah.
Back then in the 50s, he had his hair going all over the place,
Yeah.
and then he'd bang on that piano, and then he'd put his foot up on the keyboard. He'd bang with his feet. That guy was.
Yeah, I saw him in person once at like one of those oldies revival things. Yeah,
Oh,
he was crazy man on that piano.
I think he married.
And he-
Did he marry his cousin or his sister?
I don't know, but he was no spring chicken.
All right, so
He was no spring
We'll
chicken.
do a countdown. John?
Yeah, we're 42 seconds in.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, welcome back to another episode of The Jersey Alchemist, where we alchemize. What do we alchemize, Phil?
Dark to light.
Dark to light.
Fear to love.
Fear to love, lead to gold. And I like saying shit to diamonds. I am your host, Dr. John Gerard Gallucci.
And I'm Philip D'Angelo.
And Phil is backed up today by Major Bones.
Reporting for duty, Major Bones. I'm a little nervous with him behind my back like that. I mean, I'm a little concerned. But this is our second episode. The other day he was back there too, so now he's back there still. But I'm a little concerned. But we had to put the wheel. We have the wheel of
Fate and Destiny.
Fate and Destiny.
And it was Bones' idea. We said that on a previous episode. So, on behalf of Major Bones, who it was supposed to be the cousin of Milkman Celebrity Chef Bones, the original Bones, but it's really the same guy, just in a different costume, right? He thinks we don't know that, but we know that.
The DNA tests are coming back.
Right, and I still got to check him for the hemorrhoid because the previous Bones had a big hemorrhoid. He was so nasty. He was so painful to be around. But anyway, on behalf of his original request, shall we do the wheel today?
Well, let's do the wheel of Fate and Destiny.
Yeah,
I'm ready for
we'll
this.
see what comes up.
Now, with Memorial Day coming right around the corner, right? Everybody's.
Oh my God, it
is
is.
right. Another couple weeks.
Wow.
Everybody's running for the Jersey Shore, and the sound. Well, you Jersey people are going to know the sound you hear is the sound we grew up with. If you were down in the Jersey Shore on the boardwalk.
Yeah.
So
it was
it'll bring
booth,
back memories.
One booth after the next. The Wheel of Fortune, the Wheel of Chance. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. I tried to get a big one, but you can't buy them. I think they have them made on site.
Are you ready, John?
We're ready.
Bones
drum
ready?
roll, drum roll.
Drum roll.
Oh, what a topic.
Wow. Alcohol.
Oh my God, and you just mentioned it's the Memorial Day weekend, not far from now.
Yes.
Although for a lot of people, there's no need for a holiday weekend. Weekends were meant
That's true.
for drinking, for imbibing ethanol.
Yeah.
So the topic here is alcohol.
Alcohol.
And not rubbing alcohol.
No, that would be dangerous. Alcohol is interesting, John, because it's legal.
Oh, yeah.
Around the world.
Mhm.
It's on television commercials. It's advertised as something to have fun with,
Yeah,
partake with,
yeah.
party with. You can't have a celebration or watch a football game without a beer. There's celebrities now that sponsor alcohol. I know The Rock sponsors one. MMA Conor McGregor sponsors another
Well, that's
one.
his company, isn't it?
Who?
McGregor, doesn't he make Irish whiskey?
Yeah, I think, yeah, well, I think he just sold. But
Did
he
he?
started it. But all these celebrities, and there's a couple more that I'm forgetting, and they all support, manufacture alcohol.
Yeah, who's the other guy that has his own vodka company?
I don't know. Put that down in the comments,
Yeah.
people. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a celeb that
An
has his
actor?
own. Yeah.
I know. I know from the Jersey Shore TV show
Yeah.
that Mike the Situation had a vodka
Yeah.
that he was sponsoring.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it was supposed to be like a healthy choice vodka. If that's such a thing. Yeah, I mean,
Is
that
that like the salad with formaldehyde on it?
Yes, the salad
Healthy
with
choice.
healthy
Healthy
choice.
choice.
Yeah, but
Wow.
so there's a big push for alcohol in our society.
Speaking of formaldehyde, for those of you who don't know, formaldehyde is a compound when it's mixed in a 40% solution with water. That's what mortuaries and people who embalm the deceased, that's what they run in through your body, through a catheter in the arteries and out the veins, and they flush your blood out and they infuse the body with embalming fluid, and it's a 40% aqueous solution of formaldehyde. Now, why am I raising that topic when we're talking about when the wheel of fate and destiny gave us alcohol? Well, if you drink the wrong kind of alcohol, so there's isopropyl alcohol that you have them in those little alcohol swabs. If you're gonna, the nurses will do that before they
Sure.
stick an IV into you or something like that. It's kind of a skin antiseptic. It's not perfect. It fails to kill lots of microbes, but that's what's used and it's cheap, and that's isopropyl alcohol. Then there's methanol. Methanol, right. And going back to the chemistry, I do believe that methanol has one central carbon with hydroxyl groups on it, and yeah, I think it's one, but if I'm wrong, it's been 40 years. Anyway, if you drink methanol, God forbid, it gets metabolized to aldehyde and aldehyde. And that aldehyde, because you have a lot of water in your system, will further convert it and liberate it to something akin to formaldehyde. And so if you, God forbid, drink methanol, one of the first signs of methanol ingestion is that it'll denature your optic nerves. Those are the two nerves that come out of your brain and crisscross and go into your eyeballs, and you will be blind forever and ever. Amen. And then it starts to kill your organs. So, methanol is a big poison, but ethanol is just a cousin to methanol. Yeah, I think, I shouldn't have started this chemistry thing. I was good at it 4 years ago, but methanol, I believe, is one carbon, and ethanol is a 2-carbon chain, and that's how we get drinkable alcohol. And so isopropyl is a poison, methanol is a killer, and ethanol is sold on every street corner in every restaurant that has a liquor license.
Wow, that's amazing. So here we are, society. I mean, let's talk about wine. What's the alcohol content in wine, John? I mean, I'm not sure.
12%? It's
12,
either 6 or 12%.
something like that. I mean, so there's alcohol in wine, and wine's been around for how long?
You would think I would know. I drink enough wine.
Yeah, and wine has been around. The Bible.
Yeah.
Water into wine. I mean, it's so wine and alcohol have been around a long time.
There's a quote from the Bible. I couldn't give you the chapter and verse, but it says, "Give a man with a heavy heart wine. Let him drink wine."
Absolutely.
Of course.
So, here we have something where throughout history, people are trying to alter their state of mind, because that's what alcohol does. It'll alter your state of mind, impair your judgment. It will, make you feel better, make you feel sad.
Right.
I like to call alcohol truth serum. A lot of times people, they drink some alcohol and all of a sudden they're saying things that they normally wouldn't say.
Well,
and you're like, wow, I never really knew that.
That's for sure. Oh boy, yeah.
But now I've seen alcohol destroy lives.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's that balance where society, and it's been around forever, alcohol, football games, any sporting event, picnics, celebrations, it's there on one side, but on the other side, the scale, that alcohol destroys a lot of lives, and I've
Right.
seen it firsthand.
Oh, sure. And there are people who are alcoholics waiting to happen. You know, maybe you get a teenager in high school who goes out for the first time with his friends on a Friday night, and you know, the upperclassmen when we were in high school, all they had to do was be 18, and they could walk into a liquor store and say, "I'll have 6 cases of Budweiser." Nobody would question that. 6 cases, all right, that's
Yeah.
going to be, $85, kid, whatever. Uh, and then they would distribute. They were distributors, and they would distribute to the kids that were not of age. And then subsequent to that, and I don't know what year it was because I was well beyond the legal limit at that point, age-wise, but it changed from 18 to 21. I don't know what year that was. I have no idea. I think it was in the late 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Something like that.
I remember there were certain establishments in the late 70s, you know, where they didn't ID you.
Right.
So
of
as
course not.
young kids in high school, we would go to places.
Should we say it?
No,
Let's
no,
say it.
no.
I'll say it. I'll say it.
Yeah, I don't know what.
There was a place off of Washington Avenue in Belleville, New Jersey, called McGreevy's. McGreevy's.
McGreevy's.
I don't know whether the guy was a former
Mayor.
he was a former mayor,
Mayor.
right? But he was this portly old white-haired guy, Mr. McGreevy, who ran this, this old neighborhood tavern, and the only thing in there really was there was a wooden bar with a bunch of stools, and I think didn't they have the
Shuffleboard.
shuffleboard thing with the
Tremendous
right?
jukebox with the ink spots. How do I remember that? And Sinatra. You were
Right?
either under 18
Yeah.
or over 60.
Yeah, you were either under
There was
18.
no in between.
And do you remember how good the beer tasted? He had these thick, short glasses,
Yeah.
these little beer glasses, and a beer was 25 cents. And so if you bought a couple bucks,
25.
you sat there for hours knocking down, I think there must have been 6-ounce beers.
Yeah, something
Right?
like that. Yeah.
And they were always ice cold. And he had one rule that the first time we heard it, we were like, what? But then we realized, you know what? It's a cool place to come. We come there with our friends. It didn't matter if kind of rival people ended up, the guys from Belleville, there's the guys from Nutley. Hey, how did these fools from Cedar Grove get into McGreevy's, right? But here's the key. No girls allowed. Remember that? You couldn't walk in with a girl because,
Wow.
I asked him one night, I said, hey, Mr. McGreevy, how come you can't bring our girlfriends? He just looked at me. He was a very silent guy. He looked at me. His belly was rubbing on his side of the bar, and he gave me a little like this, and he goes, "There hasn't been a fight in here in years." He goes, "If I let the girls in, he goes, you guys will be fighting each other in a second."
Oh,
And I was like, "Yeah,
interesting.
sure. I guess it's true."
Yeah.
25-cent beers.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. Want to go? I bet you it's still there.
Yeah. It was his garage. I think he turned his garage into the tavern
That's really funny.
on a
Yep.
side street in Belleville. Yeah. And think about where we came from. Cedar Grove, all the way down there.
Yeah. It was about a half-hour drive.
Yeah,
right, without
yeah,
traffic.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Crazy. So what you do for alcohol? Do you remember the first time you tried alcohol, John? Whether it was wine or beer? How old you were?
Yeah, I'm sure it was at home, in the midst of my parents and grandparents. My father's father was a red wine drinker, and he was an old timer. He had a heavy, Italian accent, and on any given day or weekend when he was at our house, there wasn't, a classic bottle of red wine on the table. No, 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 no. He had a gallon of red wine on the floor, right here, right at arm's length, and he would kind of hang it. There was a glass ring on it, like a finger ring. He used to drink CK Fortissimo, which now I'm not even sure they still make it, but I did try it years and years later. I was like, oh my lordy, give me a towel. But my grandfather, God bless him, I guess because, and we're going to get into this, life could be so challenging to people, right?
Sure.
And it has everything to do with that quote from the Bible, uh, give wine to a man with a heavy heart. Have you ever looked at an old black and white photograph of immigrants, the immigrant family?
Hmm.
This is what their faces were like.
Yeah.
Nobody smiled.
Very
They had
serious.
nothing to smile about. They just left their homeland and they got on a friggin' rusty junk to come across the Atlantic Ocean, and they get to Ellis Island where they were already being put upon and being labeled. And it didn't matter where you were from, right? Not just our ancestors. And everything was a struggle. And if you didn't have a job and if you couldn't make money, you weren't going to eat. You were not going to eat. There was no place to lay your head. So the old timers, there was nothing to smile about. Nobody went on vacation. Nobody went to a restaurant. My grandfather, as he got older, he owned gas stations and then eventually an oil truck. He didn't go to a bar or a restaurant. He had it all in his apartment, in his house. And my grandmother made all the food homemade, and they made their own wine. They made their own wine. And so why go to a bar or a restaurant? Why do that? But they all had heavy hearts because life was about survival. So they drank. They drank heavy. And every ethnicity has their stereotypes and whatnot. And the stereotype was, for the Irish, it wasn't that they're always hitting a gallon of red wine. No, it was they were either drinking whiskey or beer. And that's what it was to me. That's what that came at me with the Irish. The Italians were constantly guzzling red wine and maybe, Sambuca or something like that on a special occasion. And then that other people had their stereotypes. The bottom line was life was tough enough that everybody turned for an escape. And what was the escape? The escape was to get loaded, to get loaded. And they did. Boy, did they.
Wow.
Right?
I remember growing up, we went to my grandfather's spot in Newark, and in the basement, he made his own wine.
Yeah.
And we used to use the old, remember Brookdale soda?
Oh,
For all you
sure.
Jersey people, Essex County.
Yeah.
We used to get the old Brookdale soda bottles, and
Yeah.
it was my brother's and my job. We had to cap them. He had a capper. We had a system going on, and everybody waited for that red wine. I mean,
Yeah.
homemade wine, and it is very strong. The alcohol
Yeah.
content is.
Yeah.
My uncles used to give it to us when we were smaller, and they would laugh like, "Oh, yeah." It didn't taste good, but we tried to drink it anyway.
Right, and you know what? A lot of the homemade wine that I've experienced as an adult from friends and relatives, men's amends, half and half. It really wasn't so good, except there was one guy whose son was on the same ice hockey team as my son, and whenever we went on a weekend, he knew I was waiting for him, and he would bring 3 or 4 bottles of his homemade wine.
Wow.
And this is back, I don't know what year it was. Maybe it was 2005 or something like that. It was a killer. It was delicious. And you had 2 glasses of that and you were on your ass. And, and all the parents would be waiting in the hall. We'd have these hallway parties, in the hotels, right?
I was
And
there.
the kids were playing hallway hockey, with
Sure.
their plastic sticks, and the parents were getting juiced, soaked, loaded, and it was a good time for everybody. And we, the weekend is for forgetting. The weekend is for forgetting what a douchebag your boss is, and how badly you want to wait for your boss in the parking lot, right?
Won't have a job.
You won't have a job.
You better have a job
but
lined up.
The douchebag will be gone,
Yeah.
right? And of course, that's not the right thing to do. We're not advocating, violence here.
No.
It's just you know,
That was tongue in cheek.
it's the pleasure of the fantasy. So what do you do to get away from the stress of paying the mortgage, paying the rent, paying the bills? The kid is sick. Oh my God. You you have a few drinks with dinner. You have a few drinks with dinner. And if the police all said, we don't drink, they're lying to you. Why? Because they're human beings. Everybody, for the most part, drinks unless you're a real teetotaler and you're really from a religious group that says, no, you cannot drink. You know, I've had friends that were, you know, big time born again Pentecostal Christians where at the wedding there was no music and certainly no alcohol. Well, guess what? Guess what? I take issue with that. Now, what? Not with them as people. God bless them. They have a right to do what they want. But there's that old story, you know, the wedding at Cana. The wedding at Cana. Jesus himself was at a wedding with his mother, and they ran out of wine. And his mother called the party master over and said, look, this is my son. He's going to help you with this. Just be quiet. Do what he says. That's the quote. Do what he says. And they filled these big, you know, clay casts with water, and Jesus turned the story. You know the story. He turned water to wine. And they usually would put out the premium wine first because everybody was still in their sensorium and they had a discerning tongue, and they'd say, oh wow, what an occasion, you know, and the wine is fabulous. But by the time they had a lot of wine, they didn't know what they were drinking. It didn't matter, so they saved the shit wine for the last. And the party master tasted the wine that Jesus turned to wine from water and said, how could this be? They saved the finest wine until the latter aspects of the party. They were flabbergasted. So, for all of you Christian zealots out there, and I'm not picking at you, I'm just making a point. If Jesus could turn water to wine at the wedding at Cana, I could drink liquor at a wedding. I wouldn't do it if it's your wedding and you're precluding the liquor, that's fine. But the human spirit, the human heart, the human condition is so accustomed to the crutch that is alcohol and its effects. I love to drink alcohol. I'm not promoting it. I'm not advocating it. I'm just telling you that when I'm at dinner, if the red wine is good, I'm having a couple of glasses of red wine. And if it's not a wine feeling night, there's nothing like certain beer on tap, ice cold in a frozen glass. Wow. But then, because I'm in my 60s, I got to deal with the consequences. What are the consequences? Beer bloats me up. Beer bloats me up. And of course, any alcohol serves as a diuretic, and it'll dehydrate you.
John, what about the dark side of alcohol?
Yeah.
We've talked about the celebration of alcohol. It's
Right.
great. But what about the dark side? Alcohol ruins lives.
Alcohol,
Not everybody's,
yeah, right.
but it does. There are people that just can't function. They become addicted to that alcohol. And they lose jobs, they lose marriages, they lose friends, and it's unhealthy.
Right.
And if they don't seek help, they're in a lot of trouble. Why is that addiction of alcohol so strong? Is it a mental addiction that they need to feel a certain
No,
way?
I think it's all of the above. And I think what we were alluding to at the beginning of the episode here is that, you know, I had friends in high school that were of a genetic lineage that they were predisposed to alcoholism before their first drink. And one of our friends told me years later, he says, that first night that I went drinking with a bunch of friends from school, they were like out in the woods, you know, drinking, whatever. And he said, he goes, I felt it. He goes, I felt it. He goes, and I couldn't stop. After my first time, I couldn't stop. I knew I was already hooked. I was an alcoholic.
I know somebody else, an alcoholic, who is older than us, from our town, and is extremely successful businessman, and he still struggles to this day. He goes to AA meetings.
Yeah.
Then he literally falls off the wagon. I believe he lost his marriage, lost his family. His kids were grown anyway, but he cannot. It's a battle and a demon he fights to this day.
Right. And there are shades of gray because I I had an uncle who, admitted to me. It's not like a shameful thing, but we talked about it one night, and he goes, I am a controlled alcoholic. He goes, I never drink during working hours. He goes, I never drink in the morning. He goes, but after work, and after dinner, they would go and
It's
sit.
on.
They would go and sit at a local tavern gin mill, not unlike McGreevy's in Belleville, and and they weren't like knocking back the drinks and hooping it up and getting roushes. It wasn't like that at all. They were kind of like quietly inebriated, and and he was a functional, controlled alcoholic. But then there are other people that I know in my life that immediately, as soon as they drink, they get violent, they get loud, they get mouthy, and if you're a young man, and that's how it goes for you, and you're at a sporting event, or you're in a bar, especially if there are girls in a bar. This is not the fault of the women. It's just, the old dictum at McGreevy's worked for a reason. Testosterone and egos start to clash, and if you're at how many times have we seen on the news, you go to an Eagles game or a Jets game, Jets and Giants, and they're throwing snowballs at each other, then a fight breaks out, and who gets pushed over the rail, and somebody's in jail, somebody, God forbid, has a head injury. It's tough, and the last thing you need to do, whether you're a controlled alcoholic or whether you're out of control, is to get behind the wheel of a car or, God forbid, on a motorcycle like we talked about the other day.
I was at a Yankee game one time, and a security guard, a big security guard, he had a guy, he was holding him by the collar. The guy was limp. He was so bombed, he was so drunk, and the security guard was yelling, does anybody know this guy?
Oh,
I mean, could you imagine?
Yeah,
and
nobody wanted to fess up
and
to
nobody
that.
fessed up. I mean, and then, I don't know, he was like in his 40s, the guy. I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't a young man, but...
Right, and I'm not sure what year they passed that law, that if somebody is inebriated and they leave an establishment, a bar or a restaurant, and they get into trouble, like they kill somebody or injure somebody with a motor vehicle or not, the bartender and the restaurant, the bar, they're held liable for that.
Responsible, absolutely. I managed a bar restaurant for a short time in one of my many lives, and the bartenders would come up to me and say, hey, Phil, I mean, we're cutting this guy off.
Yeah.
And you'd go up to the guy and say, well, listen, we're cutting you off. Oh, what are you talking about? You've been here for 4.5 hours. You must have had, couldn't tell you how many drinks. How are you getting home? And it was a big deal. How are you getting home? All right, we'll call a cab, leave your car here, blah, blah, blah. It's a big deal.
Right, and I'm going to tell a story, of course, no establishments named and no names named, but I guess because of my career, I wasn't somebody that was looking to, after a long, long day at work, and maybe it's 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock, a lot of times I didn't get home until midnight or the next day, but the point is, when I did, I still wanted to eat dinner, and so I would end up in a restaurant. And I still, to this day, I'm in a restaurant at least 3 nights a week, at least. And we would notice the same guy every time we were in a restaurant. And it didn't matter where we were, he was there all the time. It's like we must have just been on that same circuit. And he would sit there all by himself, and he would polish off an entire bottle of wine. But then we started to realize that he was going from establishment to establishment. So by the time he got himself home and probably passed out, he was at several establishments,
Wow.
bar hopping and restaurant hopping, so that restaurant one thought, well, okay, he had 3 glasses of wine, or he had a whole bottle of wine. We got to watch out here. But one night he was staggering through the restaurant, and he was like, you know, he was like a cartoon character. He was like a joke, staggering through the parking lot. Couldn't get, his car door opened, and I'm thinking, this guy is getting behind the wheel of his car. He's going to kill somebody. He's going to kill, like, this is impossible. We saw this over and over again. It got so bad, and we loved the restaurant we happened to be in. I called the owner over, who I was a friend with. I says, listen, I said, your customer is going to take you down unintentionally. He's going to go out there, God forbid, and kill somebody, and then they're going to say, where were you? And he's going to say, we were at such and such's place. This whole place is going down. So not at my behest. Then they kind of had him under their own house surveillance, and we realized that we didn't see him for 6 months. And so we asked the owner, says, where's so-and-so? And we didn't know, God forbid, was he dead? Was he alive? Was he strung out somewhere? Was he in a crisis center? I don't know. The owner said, no, we had to flag him. We won't let him in here anymore because he was putting us at tremendous risk. But we do see him still at the other restaurants.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Now,
amazing.
I admit, I go to eat, and I have 2 glasses of wine. Unfortunately, I eat in a in kind of a voracious fashion. I've only got it down to I'm eating either once or twice a day. I don't eat 3 or 4 times. And I guess I'm still an overeater, but I'll have 2 glasses of wine or 2 beers. But I live a mile and a half from the establishment, so, But the restaurant and bar industry exists on people who go in and have a glass of wine or 2 or a beer or 2 with dinner, and then they leave. But we got to watch out for the people who are having multiple bottles of wine from one place to the next. That's out of control.
Yeah, I mean, I know people, driving under the influence. If you've ever been stopped at a DUI checkpoint. No. Well, I used to work nights, and I got stopped a couple times, and I'll tell you what, it's no joke. I mean, you think, you're coming, just driving down the road, and when there's no exits, so if you've been drinking, and here's this line of police cars,
Yeah, right.
and there's
It's a
traffic,
pinch point, yeah.
and you're like, oh my goodness, what is this about? And you realize it. I was at a country western concert on the Parkway.
The Arts Center?
The Arts Center, correct. And I brought, me and a friend brought some kids, younger kids there, teenagers, because they weren't driving, to this country western. Fantastic. People tailgating, all right, all over the place. Inside, they must have had, John, 5, 10, 15 booths with beer and alcohol everywhere.
Everybody hooching it up.
Well, guess what? We were the first one, literally the first ones to leave the concert, because the kids wanted to go, everybody wanted to go. No problem, let's go.
Right.
There was a DUI checkpoint in the parking lot before you got back in the Parkway.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
Listen,
Right.
I get it, you're saving lives,
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
but yeah, yeah.
On
So,
both ends, on the front end and the back
Yeah.
end, cha-ching, cha-ching.
so we're going out, and the cop says, you're leaving? I said, yeah, we're taking the kids back. I goes, well, were you drinking? I said, no. He goes, you want to step out of the car? I go, are you serious? I mean, I'm not a young guy. I'm in my 50s. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I stepped out. He talked to me a little bit. He goes, all right, you can go. But I said, wow, he's going to have a busy night.
Yeah.
There's going to be about 300 people back there.
Right.
I thought that was a little unfair, but I get it. They save lives.
Yeah.
Listen, when we were younger, and there were no DUI checkpoints, let's face it, drinking and driving was a hobby.
Yeah.
I mean, we did it, through caution to the wind. We were young, dumb.
Yeah.
Thank God, everything worked out okay. We didn't hurt ourselves or anybody else.
Right.
But it seems today people are getting so overloaded with alcohol. I mean, there's people killing people, and they're going to jail.
Well, they're going to jail, and you're reminding me of my days at the trauma center down in Camden when we would be so upset because, you know, we, every single day and night, we had delivered to us roadkill. And we can remember the same people coming in. They killed somebody, they maimed somebody, somebody had their head split open, automobile accidents, but it was the same people that were totally smashed over and over and over again. And we were like, wait a minute, what? Are you kidding me? So one of the same suspects that we knew, we could not believe that law enforcement was so off the mark that they couldn't take this guy off the road. He was constantly in the trauma center all the
Hurting
time,
people.
hurting people, hurting himself, you know. And so they did an alcohol test, a blood draw with the rest of the trauma meds. And because the blood was taken and handed off by the surgery resident to the nurse, and it was out of the line of vision of the police officer who was standing right there, inadmissible in court. Inadmissible in court, as if to say, oh, the nursing staff did a switcheroony and they had, you know, somebody else's blood there, which, come on, it was really ridiculous. So all of that being said, then there's that other side of alcohol where it's a group 1 carcinogen. You know, and like I said before, I'm not a cannabis guy because it happens to make me ill. I'm envious of people who can use it and feel great, but it makes me sick. So that was kind of a, you know, that's just the way I am physiologically. But cannabis is apparently, it's got medicinal properties, and I really don't know the medicinal properties that have been proven or still yet to be proven. But we do know one thing, that cigarettes and alcohol cause cancer. Cigarettes are addicting. Alcohol, I think, is addicting on many levels, and you can get it everywhere. And it's kind of interesting, you know, group 1 carcinogen, and you'd be like, are you kidding? How is it that everybody is partaking in something that's causes cancer? Alcohol is not suspected to cause cancer. It causes cancer. It's kind of crazy. It's nutty. It's like, wow. But everybody that has a glass of wine or a beer or two after dinner, or certainly on the weekends when there's a backyard party or a party in the park, you know, with picnic tables and barbecues going, everybody's drinking beer, you know, and wine and vodka drinks, and it causes cancer. You put the two together, smoking and alcohol, head and neck cancer, classic, right out of a textbook.
John, let's not forget alcohol poisoning. How about these young kids that go to college and with these fraternities, or whether it's just a party, and these kids, they go unconscious. They've drank so much alcohol that they just never wake up.
Yeah, no, that's a
That
problem.
could happen in one shot.
Yeah, you know, kids in college are their own worst enemy. I mean, if you can get kids that get into a college and go to a college, and their parents have great expectations for them, and somewhere along the line they want to play jackass and they eat Tide Pods, and it was making kids viciously ill. I think maybe a few kids died from eating detergent pods. It's right that if that's the case, look, you know what? When I was in college, you know how I paid most of my college tuition? I delivered liquor from the liquor store to the college. I mean, I did. That's what I did. That was my job. It's crazy, but and you know, it was forget about the weekends, but almost every single night of the week, it was quarter keg here, couple of half kegs there, half keg of this type, half keg of that, quarter keg of this, cases and cases, a case of vodka, orange juice, bring us 6 bags of ice. I mean, college kids were just viciously consuming alcohol. And we wonder, forget about the rest of the poison that's in what we eat and drink. Just the group 1 carcinogen that is ethanol alone,
It's a lot of downside.
it's just no real wonder why now cancer, I think, is 1 in 2 people. When I was in medical school, I think it was 1 in 4. Now it's 1 in 2. Really? What are we doing to ourselves, people? And how do we alchemize an episode where we're talking about the aspects, the psychosocial, physiologic, pathologic aspects of alcohol? How do you alchemize that? And I think just being challenged right now to alchemize the issue of alcohol, I think it's got to go back to people are looking for an escape from their heavy-hearted world. If life were such a wonderful, delicious bowl of cherries, maybe people wouldn't be so tempted to drink the way they do. And what does this go back to? It goes back to the previous episode about intentionally created chaos. We live in a dark, fear-driven existence, people. And it causes a heaviness. It causes a heavy energy. It causes stress and anxiety and sadness and depression. And what's a quick fix? Having a drink or 2. And I don't think that alcohol will ever go away in the human condition. I don't think it will. But I think that when people really start to wake up and we start to change the way the world is run, and we get on board with that river of God's love and light, the heaviness and the darkness will abate a lot. We're going to change the world drastically. And when we do, I think the dastardly nature of alcohol and alcoholism will also abate with the heaviness and the darkness that humanity is right now caked in. And that's what I think will happen. I don't think that alcohol will ever really completely go away. I just think that the reasons alcohol is used and abused will change, and I think in that sense, I think that we'll move to a brighter place. What do you think?
I think that we should all, again, John, there's our word, awareness. Our bodies are gifts from God.
Right.
Understand and know what you're putting in your body. We've had food discussions.
Yeah.
Now here's an alcohol discussion. Understand what you're doing to yourself, your body. It's also a depressant. If you have, some kind of,
it is.
mental letdown. I mean, it could be because of alcohol consumption. Just understand what you're putting in your body. That's all I would say.
Absolutely. So, Lord, please shepherd humanity to a place of greater love and light, and the ugly nature of the group 1 carcinogen that millions and billions of people use and abuse every day, it will be abated. Amen.
Amen. Great job, John. Thank you. If you like what we're doing, people, press the like button, subscribe to the Jersey Alchemist. We'll see you next time. Peace.